All right, welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association. We're the Black Press of America, and we reach about 20 to 30 million African American readers across the United States, 230 African American owned newspapers. And we have a special program that's funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on education. And what we're looking at is the impact of COVID-19 on Black America, but particularly in the education sphere. And we're so pleased today to have one of the outstanding leaders of the whole core of Black teachers around the country, but the president of the Washington Teachers Union, Elizabeth Davis. Sister Davis, thank you so much. We know you're in the middle of contract negotiations, so this is not going to take long. But tell us, from your perspective as the president of the Washington Teachers Union, how do you see the impact of COVID-19 on the education of our young people, our young brothers and sisters in public schools in DC and throughout the country?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. And of course, I have taught in public schools in DC for 40 years.
Yes.
During that time, I've been in some of the schools that basically were left hanging after Brown v. Board. Most of those schools were in Ward 7 and 8 of the district, which has the highest population of free and reduced lunch students. So I am quite familiar with a lot of the inequities that existed and have existed in DC public schools for decades, even now. The pandemic, COVID-19, basically has magnified those inequities. The digital divide is not a new story for me or many educators. We've known for ages that has existed, but the pandemic has pulled back the covers on a lot of these inequities and have made them glaring. The opportunity gaps, and I refer to it as the opportunity gaps more so than the achievement gap, because achievement gap sort of goes to capacity to learn. And our students, I have not met a student in my 40 years of teaching that did not have the capacity to reach whatever bar I set for them. What I've noted is that the opportunities to learn for many African-American students, not only in the district, but throughout the country, has not been there. So the COVID, and of course, I hear people saying we can't wait to get back to normal conditions. For me, as an African-American educator, that does not spell relief.
Exactly.
Normal in DC public schools and in our city, it's not what I want us to get back to. I think that we need to have a public school, a matter of right, public school system that provide opportunities for every student in every part of our city that other students have access to. And we are not there yet. The digital divide, when we closed in DC in March as a result of the emergency shutdown, we discovered through a survey of our members that 35% of our students did not have access to computers at home or Wi-Fi. And of course, our school district had purchased devices for testing because we have put a lot of emphasis, way too much emphasis on testing. We cannot test our way to success. And what I've noted over the years is because the focus has been so much on test scores, that we have ignored the need for a well-rounded curriculum for students, for all students. Some students get that. And even though many of our students over the past decade, since we have been under mayoral control, I've noticed the changes in how our school system, how our schools are managed. I've noticed the lack of collaboration between the school system and stakeholders, mainly teachers and parents. And that is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Can you just, that's a serious matter. I think that to the extent to which teachers who have to teach the students and the parents who are the parents of the students are not included in the process of determining the policies of the public school system, that's an inherent problem.
Absolutely. And we're seeing those problems as a result. Of course, and I've read the assessment of DC public schools since we've been under mayoral control. I think its council commissioned a study over 5 years. I reviewed that study several years ago, testified before the council about the results of that study, which basically said that there has been little improvement in the way of cross-sector collaboration and the way of collaboration between the school district and the stakeholder groups.
Mhm.
And we've got to improve that. We have a new chancellor now. I'm feeling very hopeful that, and of course we have an education committee. Those are basically the two layers of oversight and accountability for our schools, other than the mayor. But how this pandemic has affected African-American, Black and brown children in this school district is very telling. And there's a lot that we can learn from it. One of the things is we've got to address the inequities that have existed for decades in a very real way, not a Band-Aid cover-up way, but in a real way where we're talking about all of those issues that relate to how children learn.
Yes.
We can't dismiss poverty. We cannot exclude housing, homelessness. We have 6,000 students in our public school system that report to school daily from homeless shelters. We cannot overlook that. So when we talk about opportunities to learn, bridging the opportunity gap means that we're going to have to address those inequities in order to level the learning field. And that's going to take a heavy lift. It's going to take a deep amount of understanding from our school leaders as well as our city leaders, and knowing that poverty matters, and we cannot overlook the fact that our students, Black and brown students, since even after Brown v. Board, has been trying to so-called catch up. And that, if we don't examine what that means in order to close the opportunity gaps, those issues that we need to be able to address in order to do that. And collaboration is key to that. It is quite critical to that.
Well, we know the time is short, but I want to do a more detailed conversation with you about the opportunity gap. I like the way you defined it, and I'm going to ask Stacey Brown, our senior correspondent, to be in touch with you. I would like to do a total national news feature about the opportunity gap, because a lot of the literature is still on the education gap, on the achievement gap, but what are the undergirding factors that contribute to the achievement gap? That's hardly, nobody talks about it. So we definitely would like to get you back in more detail about the opportunity gap.
And I would love to, yes.
While we have you representing the teachers in the teachers union, how are the teachers coping? I know in distance education, there's some challenges with the delivery of the instructions through online and distance education. So talk about that for a moment.
Great. And of course, when in March, mid-March, when teachers had to transition very quickly from brick and mortar teaching to distance learning, they did so in 5 days. No professional development. And of course, even now, we have not done enough work towards getting distance learning right. We know that we're going to be in a hybrid model of teaching from now until we don't know when. So we do need to get distance learning right. And the first step to that is ensuring that we close the digital divide. We've asked in the district for our city leaders and our school district leaders to provide a one-to-one device for every child in this city, no matter where they are. Homeless shelters, we want each of them to have a one-to-one device, not sharing in a household that has 3 children, 1 device. That's the first thing we need to take care of, to ensure that that device can handle the platform. And then we need to talk about preparing our teachers, sustain ongoing professional development. That is not only going to help them to know more than to do more than just know how to use those platforms such as Zoom and Teams, but to know how to transition content, rigorous, well-rounded content to virtual teaching. We have not had that. Professional development is something that the WTU has taken a lot of time to get right. We offer a lot of professional development for new teachers. We acknowledge that we have a lot of new teachers coming into our school district every year. Since I've been president, since 2013, we have inducted 600 to 700 new teachers each of those years. So our turnover rate is high. And our city council has examined why is our teacher and principal turnover rate so high? And of course, we know that happens. When that happens, it creates more instability for kids who already are dealing with instability in their lives. So we've got to examine what is the reason for exiting, why our school district is exiting new teachers that we recently inducted. A lot of it has to do with support, having an induction program that is going to provide the help, the support to teachers that are coming in, and also to those who have been here, having a mentoring program ongoing throughout the year, not a one-shot drive-by where teachers take 3 days of PD and call it a day. So we've got to get that right. Getting our teachers on board. We have teachers who are coming to our school district from all over the country, and
Yes.
some teachers that are coming from outside of the US. We have teachers who we recruited from the Philippines, from China, from Colombia. And if you do know, that will create cultural conflicts if we are not preparing those teachers not to allow their preconceived notions about who our children are. And they're teaching children who are quite different from who they are. They're coming from places that are quite different from the backgrounds and the communities of the students they teach. And what we don't want is for the teachers' preconceived notions about who students are and what expectations they should have for those students based on their knowledge is not a good idea.
Exactly.
So, culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, getting our teachers on board to know that we have students who are coming, no matter where they come from, they come with knowledge. They come with communities. They come with values. And we've got to respect those values and figure out how to integrate those into the lessons that we teach.
The last thing I wanted to ask you before you go is about salaries. It's commonly known that teachers are the most overworked, underpaid profession in America. And you've been teaching for 42 years, girl. My hat is off to you. I come from a group of family of educators. My mother and father were school teachers. And growing up, I just, oh man, I know what lesson plans are. Lord have mercy. But the thing is, talk about today as we get ready to go into 2021. What is this prospect for getting teachers paid, not just a living wage, but paid a salary that's commensurate with the great work that they do with our young people?
And you know, that even though we often hear school leaders, including our own here in the district, and in the last 7 years, I have worked with 5 chancellors.
Okay.
So I often hear them say that we are some of the highest paid teachers in the nation. And that is really not an accurate statement because we live in the district. Our teachers, 65% of our teachers cannot afford to live in the district, and they don't. They live outside. Wow. They live in Maryland. And of course, when you look at how much we value education, we should also value those people who impart education to our children, because education really is the great equalizer. It truly is. It is. When I think of education, and I stayed in as a teacher, I was actually hired by the last white superintendent in DC public schools, Carl Hansen. You remember him?
Yes.
Hobson versus Hansen. He was one of my professors, and I was an engineering student. He convinced me to consider teaching drafting for 1 year as, you know, just as an experiment. He didn't have women teaching that subject. I agreed. I had student debt up to the ceiling. So once after that first year at Jefferson Academy, I could not turn back. I absolutely loved it because my background as an advocate for civil rights, my parents were, I came from a segregated school system in North Carolina until 3rd grade, moving here. So
what city in North Carolina?
Wilson.
Wilson, I know Wilson. That's where the G.K. Butterfield family.
Yes, my whole family owns Wilson, Rock, Mount Charlotte. We're all over North Carolina.
I hear you. Okay.
And our family could make up a small village. And of course, so, you know, I have a passion for education. When we hear the phrase education as liberation, I truly understand what that means. Because as a teacher, I was able to I had the opportunity to use my classroom as a laboratory for social justice. And I absolutely loved it. Being able to teach students, no matter how young, and the youngest grade level I've ever taught was middle school, junior high, teaching them how to solve problems from the knowledge that I shared with them. Teaching them how to use what they've learned and apply it to real world problem solving, no matter what the problems were. So my favorite expression to teach my students was, when they came into my classroom complaining about the deplorable conditions of our school, the bathroom, the cafeteria, the food. And I said, you're absolutely right. Now, are you going to do anything about it? And if so, what do you think we can do? And then begin the process of teaching them how to resolve that problem in a way that was going to be real and lasting. And having them to understand that they were not powerless. I think that's one of the greatest lessons for Black and brown children, especially now. You have the power, if you use it, to change unsatisfactory conditions in your school, in your communities, things that you feel are unjust, that you feel are unfair. You can speak about it, you can question me, question others, and critically think about a problem and challenge it. But I want you to learn how to do that. So that's one of the reasons I love teaching. I was offered positions in administration for years, never interested. Being in the classroom with students, that was my superpower, and I loved it.
Well, thank you so much for your long, many years of serving the public school system in our nation's capital. We just want to continue this discussion, and we know we have to go. We'll come back. I really want to go over this opportunity gap with you some more. And I really like that theme from almost decades ago, education is liberation.
Yes,
Yes. So thank you.
Yes.
Elizabeth Davis.
Thank you. And I will send you my my cell number because I do respond to text messages. My email box is like 78,000 messages right now.
Yes, please, because we went around 4 or 5 people trying to find you.
I'm going to put my number in the chat right now. How's that?
Yes, and that way we can be in direct touch. And I will text you I'll text you my cell number.
All right, now we're talking. 957-3119. I think that worked. 202-957-3119.
3119. And area code 202?
Correct. Gotcha. Well, thank
All
you
right.
so much. I like your Mandela book behind you there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Nelson Mandela and I were close friends.
One of my heroes.
One of my treasured memories, I spent most of the 1970s in our home state of North Carolina in prison.
Really?
One of the Wilmington 10. And when Barbara Sizemore and others were here in Washington, the Washington teacher put the Wilmington 10 story in the curriculum. So every elementary school child learned something about the Wilmington 10 case. This was in the 1970s. Yeah.
Wow, that's progressive.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? We're going to talk about how that has changed.
All right, I got you.
Because when you delete the history of people, it's basically for a purpose.
Yes, absolutely.
And our curriculum has become one of total compliance.
Exactly.
Not critical literacy.
Well, we want to talk about that because, closing that opportunity gap, changing the curriculum, make sure that people are not only just culturally sensitive, but culturally relevant. What's going on? Hey.
Yes, yes.
So Elizabeth Davis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you and the Washington Teachers Union.
Thank you so much, and you enjoy the holiday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.